Hello everybody and welcome back to another movie news video. My name is Joker and today we're going to be discussing some of the rumors going on around the new solo Matt Reeves Batman movie. So over the past few years there's been a lot of talk about what's going to come in the next solo Batman movie as far as the story goes and when it's going to bring to a whole nother world as far as the DCEU is concerned, or if it's going to be its own standalone movie. Now as of right now it looks as if the new Matt Reeves Batman movie is going to be a standalone film and is not going to be involved necessarily with the DCEU. That is not 100% confirmed as far as I don't think, but from the way they're looking at it, I don't think it's necessarily fully connected, as they are looking for a younger Batman story to be told. And now that we have our Batman cast as Robert Pattinson to play a younger, more new Batman to the scene, it makes you wonder what kind of villains are we going to be looking at when it comes to this next movie. Now, the only confirmed, I'm going to use that term lightly here because this is all just rumor and speculation, so take everything with a grain of salt. But the confirmed villains we have so far are Penguin and Catwoman, which is an interesting choice. We've seen them before as it's been played out through over the several live-action Batman movies that we've gotten since 1989. But it's also interesting because, there are a lot of other villains you could choose for this movie, and there's going to be a lot that we probably will never see on screen. Now, we've already seen Penguin and Catwoman together in Batman Returns, the Tim Burton film from 1992, but it makes us wonder, what exactly are we going to be doing with these characters, and how are they going to help with this new Batman role that we have? And on top of that, is more interesting is that there are more and more sources coming out saying that there's more villains confirmed for the movie. Not necessarily different versions, instead of saying, we're not having Penguin and Catwoman, we're having two different ones. It's just more sources coming out and just adding to the list. So the first one we have, there's an outlet here called Geeks Worldwide, who supposedly has a casting breakdown for both Riddler and Firefly, saying that Warner Brothers is looking for people to play these roles and what they're looking for. And it's interesting because we've also seen the Riddler once, but never Firefly. And I don't think you could do Firefly by itself in a solo movie, because I think you would definitely need to have another villain on top of that. I don't think there's enough to Firefly that you could do its own movie by itself and have it stand out like the rest of the movies we've already gotten. I could be completely wrong on that, but it seems like if you were to pair up Riddler and Firefly, that would be a safe bet, because you could easily have some riddle that Batman does not solve, and because of that, the Firefly ends up like lighting up a family. I know it's dark and disturbing, but this is the kind of stuff that happens in the comics, and that would be something that you could easily see on screen. A building goes up in flames because Batman can't solve a riddle set out by the Riddler, or something to that degree. Now, the other outlet from Discussing Film is also suggesting Two-Face and Mad Hatter. Now, this is supposedly that they're just adding to the casting list. This isn't just two separate different villains. They're not saying, replace Riddler and Mad Hatter with these two or something like that. It's just they just keep adding the villains to the list. So now that gives us 6 full villains. So we've got Penguin, Catwoman, Mad Hatter, Riddler, Firefly, and Two-Face. Now, there's a lot going on there, and I don't think it's safe to necessarily have 6 villains in one movie, but there's more to discuss here. Now, this is supposed to be something pleasing to the comic book fandom. Everyone's going to be pretty excited because when you hear 6 villains, the first thing that a lot of us think about is a comic called The Long Halloween. For those of you who are unfamiliar with The Long Halloween, it is a comic stretch about 16 or 17 issues long, I think. You can get the whole thing on Amazon for about $16, so if you like to read comics, I definitely recommend checking that out. But there's 2 sides of this story that play out during The Long Halloween, and it's basically about there's a crime that Bruce Wayne is framed for that apparently his father committed, and he's battling that in his normal life, while as Batman, he's working alongside Harvey Dent and Jim Gordon to bring in a man called Holiday, who is known to murder someone on one holiday out of every month of the year. It's pretty messed up when you hear about it. But the reason that sounds like The Long Halloween is because The Halloween has another list of 6 villains that appeared during the entire run, which is Holiday, Scarecrow, Joker, Mad Hatter, Poison Ivy, and the Riddler. So Mad Hatter and the Riddler are the same that we've already seen in the other casting lists. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be The Long Halloween, but if they wanted to take that approach, I think it would be a safe bet, because you're seeing more of an older comic book brought back to life on screen and not necessarily going for something that we've already seen before. And I think it's better to do this one just because it's not as well known per se as something like A Death in the Family, for example, or The Dark Knight Returns. But if we're not doing The Long Halloween and you're truly wanting to cast 6 villains in one movie, that's really scary, because it would seem like everyone gets about 15 minutes of screen time at the most is what you're looking at. And that's really not a whole lot when you're trying to convey, a really good villainous tone against something like a younger Batman in this case. Now, there's a lot of talk that they want this movie to be more of a noir detective style, so we get to see more of the world's greatest detective side of Batman instead of just the, badass crime fighting side of it, which I think if you're going to do that, go with one villain and pick the Riddler. It would be a very safe bet for someone to go ahead and just pick the Riddler for this movie, just so you have the riddles, you have the crime solving aspect of this movie that you would need in a young noir detective style Batman movie. movie, and it would be a completely different thing than what we've already seen. Sure, we've seen him do detective work in most of these movies, but it's not so much as that as it is just the, crashing through windows and fighting the villain. Getting a more detective side, breaking down everything, would be a much more intriguing and much more enticing story in a Batman movie, I think, which is why I think if you went with a Riddler for this, because we've seen it with Jim Carrey, but you could get it in a whole nother world as it's just the solo Batman versus the Riddler, instead of Batman versus 6 other villains. However, it is also confirmed, I'm going to say again, this is all rumor, that Robert Pattinson has signed a 3-movie deal with Matt Reeves to play Batman in 3 movies. Now, what you could be doing, if you want to bring in all 6 villains in the beginning of the first movie, and try to layer them so each one 2 villains per movie, but you see them all from the beginning, you could arc them all together in a 3-part movie. Not necessarily like part 1, part 2, part 3, but just 3 different stories that have all the villains that we've already seen from the beginning, giving it its own kind of a better closed-in world, per se. And since it is also possible that this could be a standalone movie and not necessarily related to the DCEU, you could create your own, I guess you could call it an Earth 2 style movie, where it's its own separate arc with Batman dealing with all of these villains throughout this 3-film franchise. Now, out of all of these villains, I think even then, if you were to do all 6 in one film, the issue you'd have there is that some of them would be, like burnouts. You would have them for a little bit in the beginning and then be knocked out. As an example, we have Firefly and Mad Hatter in these list of possibles for this movie, and if they were to be involved in this movie along with their other 4, I think that they would just be throwaway villains in the beginning. Very similar, and I say that because, I feel like it would be open with Batman fighting them or taking them down and getting arrested, very similar to what the supposed opening of Spider-Man 4 was going to be for Sam Raimi, when it was going to open with Spider-Man stopping Mysterio during a bank robbery, and he was going to get arrested in the beginning of the film. He wasn't going to be the main focus. Also, in the video game aspect, very similar to Batman Arkham Origins, where you end up fighting the Electrocutioner, and you think it's going to be this giant fight, but really it's just a quick time event. You knock him out with one punch. So that's why I think that if you're going to put in villains like Firefly and Mad Hatter, they're probably not going to have that big of an impact on the story, and they're only going to be there just to be like, hey, this is what Batman's been up to, since, we don't know a lot of it going into this new movie. Overall, though, the rest of the villains that they've listed, I think is fine. I think it'd be great to see the Riddler or Two-Face again, and, I could go ahead and see Penguin. I don't think we need to see Catwoman just yet. We did just see her in The Dark Knight Rises, but out of all of these, I'd be happy with most of these, as long as it's not the Joker from the start. I don't think we need to go into another Joker just yet. We just got Jared Leto, and a lot of fans were not happy about that. So if you were to bring in another Joker into this movie, I think it'd be way too soon, especially since we also have the solo Joker movie coming out in October that is also supposedly another standalone movie, not involved with the DCEU. So if you're going to use the Joker in this trilogy, wait. Okay, wait till maybe announce him in the end of the second film to go into the third film as the final act villain, because if you start a new project with the Joker as the main thing, you kind of hit a roadblock. And I say that because you don't want something that's going to be the biggest, baddest thing you can fight, and then it just kind of peers off after that. As an example, I think it was really smart in the Dark Knight trilogy to start with Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul, because you could easily see where Batman was trained and how he came about with the League of Assassins, and then he ends up fighting, a smaller time villain such as Scarecrow, and then leading on to Ra's al Ghul. I think that's a safe bet. And then you know what he's capable of, you know what the Batman is, and then you move into the Dark Knight by announcing the Joker. You go through that fight, and then you go to Bane in Dark Knight Rises. Maybe not the best villain of choice per se, but it is a more bigger threat. Sure, Joker was threatening to blow up a bunch of people and blow up a building, blow up hospitals, whereas in the Dark Knight Rises, Bane literally shut off the entirety of Gotham City from the rest of the world and was threatening to just blow up the entire city with a nuclear bomb. So the villain aspect is important, okay? You don't want the Joker from the start, but you also don't want a plot that's going to be giantly excessive. You want a villain that matches the plot so you can move the story along, so the stakes are higher in each one of these 3 films, which is why I think it'd be safer to start with someone like the Riddler in this first movie, and if you were going to go with the Joker, leave it till the very end, which is what everyone would want to see. Again, these are just opinions, and again, take everything with a grain of salt, because none of this is 100% confirmed, but when it does get confirmed, in whatever aspect it is, I will definitely be making a video and telling you guys about it. But until then, that'll be all for this video, guys. Remember, if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this new idea of castings for the new solo Batman movie, and let me know what you think of this video and if you like it, or if you'd like to see anything else. But until then, and as always, I will see you guys next time.